Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going over a really hot topic in kayak and kayak fishing. Paddle, pedal, or power? That is a question that a lot of people are asking themselves with a lot of the new kayaks coming out and a lot of the innovation in the market. Which one to go with can be a little daunting sometimes. Maybe somebody doesn't want to go into one side of the pool and then need something later on the complete different side of the spectrum there. So on these, I'm going to break down the three types of kayaks, what they're used for, who they're best for, and maybe kind of go over what separates each category from the other. Thanks for coming by, guys. Let's get right into it. Okay, so really starting out with these three categories, they all fill really three separate needs. And I'm gonna go over those here. I'll just go over some pros and some cons to all three and what kind of separates them from each other. So starting out, I'm gonna go with paddle. Pretty much at one point, 100% of kayaks out there, where you needed a paddle. A double-bladed paddle, good quality paddle is going to go a long ways in carrying you from point A to point B, and you're really increase your chances of enjoying it more in efficiency. A lot of technology has come a long ways in carbon fiber, fiberglass, a lot of materials that are light and are a lot better to propel you forward. But what do you get with a paddle kayak that you don't get with the other two, whether it be pedal or power? Number one, it's budget friendly. So you can spend some money on paddles, but overall, compared to the pedal drives and the motorized options, you're going to spend a considerable less money on the paddle version. So a good paddle is always good. If you got $1,000 budget, I always suggest to people spend about $150 to $200 or above on your paddle. You're going to thank me for that. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be lightweight. It's going to be a lot less taxing on your arms and shoulders, and you're just going to enjoy yourself more. The second thing with a paddle is it's just going to be more versatile. You're going to be able to do more types of water, whether you're in big open water, really small creeks and coves, and some really, really skinny water and adventure water. You're talking about rapids. Nothing crazy, even though you can do that with a paddle kayak. But when you're talking about fishing, a lot of us like to fish really skinny water, really narrow ways, and sometimes with a pedal drive kayak, it's not the best for that type of water. And the same thing with a motor. Paddle gets you into some of those areas really nicely, and a lot of times just having a paddle and an anchor is going to do a lot of the things people think they need a pedal drive or a motorized kayak to do. And lastly, my favorite part about a paddle kayak is it's a more intimate or more pure experience on the water. It's quiet, you want to sightsee, you want to get in some of them areas, and you just get more of a serenity feeling about being out on the water with a good kayak and a quality paddle. Just me personally, I just like it. I like scenery, I like being in the wildlife, I like to fish, but sometimes with a paddle, it's just a nice way, and to my opinion, unplug. It's the same way as being away from your phone and everything else. It gets you into some of those areas, and also you're not having to deal with batteries, you're not having to deal with moving components. Is my pedal drive going to malfunction? Is my battery going to run out? With a paddle, it's just you in the water in your kayak there. So that's what I like about it. Now, some of the cons on paddle, which they're going to be obvious. The paddle is going to be a little more taxing on your body than the pedal drive or the motorized will be. That goes without saying, really. So with a paddle version, you're not going to run as much or as far as you will with the other two options. Now, depending on what kind of water you're on, I'm namely talking about lakes here, big open water. Obviously rivers, that's a different story, but if you're in big open water, you want to cover a lot of ground. The other two options may benefit you a little bit more and be a little more worth your investment there. Another thing about paddle kayaks are poor technique can really, especially if you're a beginner or a novice, it can really make your time on the water a lot more taxing than it needs to be. So that's why I always suggest do your research, watch some good videos. If there's a paddle class nearby, definitely consider taking that. Good technique can really overcome some shortcomings with kayak design. Maybe your budget is not where where you can buy some of the higher quality upper tier kayaks, but a good paddle stroke, good technique can make your time on the water a lot more enjoyable. And finally, the con with paddle is if you have a physical disability or limitations, it can be even worse on the paddle. A lot of people go with pedal drives or motorized because maybe you have some back issues, maybe you have some hip, some knee, some ankle, and I'm talking about people of all ages here. This is not just for elderly or young, but sometimes you can have some disabilities or limitations that can really prevent you from adequately enjoying your time on the water with a paddle kayak. Okay, so going into pedal drive. So pedal drive, they've been around for long enough where you're starting to see a lot more variety, both on the budget end of it, both the low and the high end, the styles, whether it's prop driven or it's fin drive. And now you got a few different manufacturers doing the same things. So pedal drives, just the same as paddling kayaks, you really do get what you pay for, but sometimes not everybody needs all of the bells and whistles. So that's definitely something you want to do, whether it be watching videos here on YouTube or getting hands-on or demoing some of these kayaks, is you really knowing what you want, where you want to take these kayaks is really going to steer you in the right direction, in my opinion, and probably save you quite a bit of money on the pedal drive versions. So one thing I would definitely consider you to look at is the materials. That's going to tell you a lot about the durability, and obviously warranty. Warranty is a big deal because you have a lot more moving parts with a pedal drive kayak than you do a paddle kayak. So first and foremost, your pedal drive kayak is going to be a lot more efficient. So your legs, your thighs, your calves, your feet, your hips are going to be stronger than your shoulders and your arms. Now, obviously with good technique, you want to engage your core, you want to twist, try to use more of your body than just shoulders and arms. But pedal drives, your arm, and to me, it's just as good of a workout doing pedal drives, specifically the bicycle style prop drives, because again, it's like that stationary bicycle. So you're still getting a little bit more exercise, but it's just a little bit different. It can be a little bit easier on the shoulders as well. So those of you that have shoulder issues, your pedal drives may be where it's at. You're also going to be able to cover a lot more ground, go further. It'll definitely help with your boat position. And pedal drives was really the first experience in kayaking with that true hands-free experience. So you're fishing, you're not grabbing a paddle to reposition your boat. You can, maybe a little bit of a handle to steer your rudder, and you're going reverse and forward with your pedal drive. So it allows you to maintain that boat position while you're fishing and focus more on what you came there to do, and that's fish. Throwing lines, throwing lures in the water, and again, more cast usually is going to equal more fish. Pedal drives allow you to do that a little bit better than paddle kayaks. And again, I'm talking about quality to quality here. Another thing you get with a pedal drive kayak is you're going to have the use of a rudder. Now, you do have paddle kayaks that have rudders, but more or less, pretty much 99.9% of kayaks out there with pedal drives, they need to have a rudder. And if they don't, you really need to think about what you're looking at there. But this allows you to, again, steer it right and left while your pedal drive, whether it be prop or fin, is propelling you forward or backward. Hey everybody, I wanted to talk about today's video sponsor, and that's RedOdo battery. What you see behind me here, this is the 12 volt, 100 amp hour battery that I've been using all year on my Motor Guide XI3, and I've got it hooked up to their 14.6 volt, 20 amp charger. You can check all these products on their website. I'll leave a link in the description down below. You can use code PADDLER to save 5%. And as always, shipping is free. They run sales periodically as well, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And they're constantly coming out with new products. So check them out, and let's get back to the video, guys. So let's talk about the cons with pedal drive kayaks. So with pedal drives, and I'm talking about quality here, you're going to get pricey. So a quality pedal drive kayak, in my opinion, and again, I'm not telling you what to do with your money, obviously, but you're really going to want to look at nothing less than $2,200, $2,300. I'm just saying that because I'm talking about quality, something that's going to last you a long time, something that's comfortable, that's stable, and has a good warranty back. Obviously, you're going to want to look at perception and up, and that's always the advice I give. They're rotomolded, they're made in the US. You know, that covers brands like Jackson Kayak, Old Town, Hobie, Native, Bonafide, all of those. But with a quality pedal drive kayak, you are looking at a good investment. So that's why it's very, very important to narrow it down as far as what kind of water you're doing and what you're needing that kayak to do. Another thing, and definitely one of the biggest considerations, is the weight. Pedal drive kayaks are typically going to be much heavier than your paddle kayaks, and it's because you got a lot more moving components, you got rudder controls, you got lines, you got cable moving through it, and in the addition of an actual pedal drive unit. So typically your pedal drive kayaks are going to be trailered, put in the back of a truck. There are some pedal drive kayaks that you can car top, but just know that those are going to be kind of few and far between with a quality fishing kayak setup. And that brings me to my last con, a lot more moving parts. So there can be a lot more to go wrong, and that's why I always tell people when you're looking at pedal drive kayaks, it's very important to go with a quality brand. There's a lot more that can go wrong with it. You want to make sure these are quality components and not just maybe corners that were cut to make the overall price a little bit less. Don't skimp on your pedal drive unit alone. You can skimp a little bit on price on the features that are included on the kayak. That's why a lot of the manufacturers will have different levels of price. You know, take Jackson Kayak, they got the bite and then they got the big rig. Those are two separate, separate ends of the rope there. Same thing with Hobie. Hobie sells the cheapest pedal drive kayak that we sell, but also sells the most expensive. So there are quite a bit of options out there for pedal drive kayaks. And finally, we're to power. Power can be a kayak that comes from the factory with a motor on it, or a kayak that is meant to be motorized. So a lot of your kayaks out there, especially the newer ones in the fishing lineups, come with the ability to motorize. So motorizing a kayak has come a long ways just really in the last 5 years. Specifically in the last 3 or 4 with the Motor Guide XI3, it gives you the ability to do spot lock on a kayak. You have the Torqeedo and the Newport motors, which have come a long ways just in the last few years. But again, what do you get with a motorized kayak besides just a motor? What advantages do you have over pedal or paddle kayaks? And where would a motorized kayak benefit you more over the other two? So namely, a motorized kayak is the most efficient way to cover a lot of water. Doesn't mean that's the one you need to have, but just know that if you're wanting to cover a lot of distance and not wanting to exert a lot of energy, specifically fishing, I'm talking about going a mile or more out and not huffing and puffing when you get to the end of it. Even if you're in good shape, the last thing you want is a high heart rate when you're wanting to get stuff going, get stuff organized there. You're definitely going to be more efficient. So this is going to get into discussion a little bit on bow versus stern. So stern motors are going to get you to your spot faster, and your bow mount motors are typically going to keep you locked into specific spots and a little bit easier to kind of pull you around short distances. I'm not a big fan of doing both of them on the same kayak, but just know that there's going to be a primary reason you have a motor on that kayak. If you're just wanting to kind of move around an area, more controlled, the bow mount motor is definitely the way to go. If you're wanting to cover a lot of distance and get there really quick, your stern mount motors are definitely going to be worth looking at. And the biggest thing to me that you get with a motorized kayak is you get the boat capability with the access of a kayak. So it kind of blurs the line between boat and kayak a lot more. You're typically going to trailer a motorized kayak or have a really strong friend following you around, loading it and unloading it. That's always something to really keep in mind with both the pedal and the power versions. But motorized, you're definitely going to be in there because you're going to have to consider the weight of a battery, wiring, the motor itself, plus the other gear and yourself on the kayak. So you're typically going to want a kayak with a really good weight capacity to accommodate all of this gear and still be able to perform the duties that it was designed to do with all of that added weight to it. Okay guys, so going over some of the cons of motorized option, they're going to be obvious and they're going to be very similar to the pedal drive. One, the quality is going to be pricey. I'm talking about Newport, Torqeedo, Motor Guide, Minn Kota, they're all going to be a premium price. Now there are some stuff like the Bixby motors, even though they can be pricey also. There are some other options and lower cost trolling motor options, but for the sake of this video, I'm talking about both your stern and your bow mount motors, which are going to be your Motor Guide, Minn Kota, Newport, Torqeedo. Personally, I like the Newports because it allows you to run your own battery. Maybe you want a little bit more amp hours on your battery instead of having to buy their own proprietary power pack. Nothing wrong with Torqeedo, and I'm not saying that, but me personally, I like the Newport setup a little bit better. But with that said, they are all pricey. And another thing you're going to have to consider is the total weight. So you're not dealing with the pedal drive most of the time on a motorized kayak. Again, you can do that to some pedal drive kayaks, but specifically buying a kayak to put a motor on it, you're going to have to factor in some things. Your personal weight, the weight of your gear, and you're going to have to add on the weight of a battery and the motor. So it's good to do your homework a little bit on the forefront to keep you from maybe making a bad decision before going all in on it. So just know the price can get a little bit high, but overall, if you're going with a kayak that is specifically designed to motor, sometimes your motor options can be about the same price as your pedal drive options if you're going one or the other. Again, a lot of your pedal drive kayaks are made to motorize, specifically your higher end fishing ones. So just know that if you're not using a motor, having that pedal drive as your secondary propulsion can be nice if it's in the budget. And obviously with motorized kayaks, not all kayaks are meant to be motorized. So that can really kind of narrow down your options, which can be a good or a bad thing. So there's not as many options. I see that changing a lot in the next couple of years. There's some great options with the Bonafide PWR, the New Canoe Unlimited, among others out there. And in some of them, like the Old Town Autopilot, comes straight from the factory. You just got to put a battery on it and plug it in. That's all you got to do. Another thing, and something that I've dealt with a lot here locally, and I'm sure you have, depending on your state and your requirements, registering a kayak with a motor on it can be a little frustrating and can require a little bit more patience than a lot of us are used to. So don't go and yell at the DMV employee. They're probably not used to, so far, they're probably not used to registering kayaks. But you do have to register a kayak more times than not because you're putting a motor on it. You're registering the kayak itself and not the trolling motor. So definitely check with your state's regulations and requirements before going into that. And a lot of times that can reduce some of that frustration. But you're going to want to exercise a little bit of patience. Trust me on this. Ask me how I know. And finally, just knowing which motor is best suiting what you need. So your stern mount motors are really just to get you more ground faster. Think of a bass boat. That motor in the back is going to take you, it's going to zip you to your spot, it's going to get you there quicker, and then a lot of your bass boats are going to have trolling motors on the front to kind of ease you around the spot once you get there. That's kind of what you get with the kayak, although you find yourself really choosing between one or the other. You can do both on a lot of kayaks, but it's really not recommended. So your bow mount trolling motors are going to be your motors that have your spot lock capability, your GPS capability. A lot of times you can sync up a fish finder with GPS capability to those motors and chart your path on that display, which is really nice. That's what you get out of the bow mount motor. Your stern mount motor is it's a power plant in the back. They're electric outboard motors. They're brushless, which is really nice because they're very, very quiet. That's why we're fishing from kayaks typically, is that stealth factor. You get that with a lot of the motors now designed for kayaks. So the biggest thing here I want to leave you with is be realistic on how much money that you're willing to spend on this setup, because just like any hobby that's fishing or anything related, it can get very, very pricey very, very quickly. And a lot of times building it incrementally is always the best way to go, in my opinion, because it allows you to build it over time, because your needs may change. I see a lot of kayaks that with motors and all kinds of rigged up on Facebook Marketplace for sale, and it looks like it's never even been in the water. People go too far too quickly, in my opinion, and you want to enjoy it. You want to have a rig that is designed for your specific needs and going to be something you enjoy for years to come. Anyways, guys, I hope this video has helped you out. Hopefully this has answered some of the questions, made it a little bit easier to kind of narrow down which direction you want to go. Me personally, I own all three types. They all have their place. And then you don't have to go crazy on the motor. You can get you a nice quality paddle driven kayak that's going to last you forever, and you're going to catch fish. The biggest thing is how much ground you want to cover, how much you're willing to spend, and how nice of a setup do you want. That's really going to really drive your decision as to where you're going to go with this. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.